pay my dues time after time. I've done my sentence, but committed no crime.
Section 8 of the Report on the Investigation into Russian Interference in the 2016 Presidential Election. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynn Jarrow. Report on the Investigation into Russian Interference in the 2016 Presidential Election by Robert Mueller. 7. Post-convention contacts with Kislyak. Ambassador Kislyak continued his efforts to interact with campaign officials with responsibility for the foreign policy portfolio, among them Sessions and Gordon. In the weeks after the convention, the office did not identify evidence in those interactions of coordination between the campaign and the Russian government. A. Ambassador Kislyak invites J.D. Gordon to breakfast at the ambassador's residence. On August 3, 2016, an official from the embassy of the Russian Federation in the United States wrote to Gordon on behalf of Ambassador Kislyak, inviting Gordon to have breakfast or tea with the ambassador at his residence in Washington, D.C. the following week. Gordon responded 5 days later to decline the invitation. He wrote, "These days are not optimal for us, as we are busily knocking down a constant stream of false media stories while also preparing for the first debate with HRC. Hope to take a rain check for another time when things quiet down a bit. Please pass along my regards to the ambassador." The investigation did not identify evidence that Gordon made any other arrangements to meet or met with Kislyak after this email. B. Senator Sessions' September 2016 meeting with Ambassador Kislyak. Also in August 2016, a representative of the Russian embassy contacted Sessions' Senate office about setting up a meeting with Kislyak. At the time, Sessions was a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and would meet with foreign officials in that capacity. But Sessions' staff reported, and Sessions himself acknowledged, that meeting requests from ambassadors increased substantially in 2016, as Sessions assumed a prominent role in the Trump campaign, and his name was mentioned for potential cabinet-level positions in a future Trump administration. On September 8, 2016, Sessions met with Kislyak in his Senate office. Sessions said that he believed he was doing the campaign a service by meeting with foreign ambassadors, including Kislyak. He was accompanied in the meeting by at least 2 of his Senate staff, Sandra Luff, his legislative director, and Pete Landrum, who handled military affairs. The meeting lasted less than 30 minutes. Sessions voiced concerns about Russia's sale of a missile defense system to Iran, Russian planes buzzing U.S. military assets in the Middle East, and Russian aggression in emerging democracies such as Ukraine and Moldova. Kislyak offered explanations on these issues and complained about NATO land forces in former Soviet bloc countries that border Russia. Landrum recalled that Kislyak referred to the presidential campaign as an interesting campaign. And Sessions also recalled Kislyak saying that the Russian government was receptive to the overtures Trump had laid out during his campaign. None of the attendees, though, remembered any discussion of Russian election interference or any request that Sessions convey information from the Russian government to the Trump campaign. During the meeting, Kislyak invited Sessions to further discuss U.S.-Russia relations with him over a meal at the ambassador's residence. Sessions was non-committal when Kislyak extended the invitation. After the meeting ended, Luff advised Sessions against accepting the one-on-one meeting with Kislyak, whom she assessed to be an old-school KGB guy. Neither Luff nor Landrum recalled that Sessions followed up on the invitation, or made any further effort to dine or meet with Kislyak before the November 2016 election. Sessions and Landrum recalled that, after the election, some efforts were made to arrange a meeting between Sessions and Kislyak. According to Sessions, the request came through CNI and would have involved a meeting between Sessions and Kislyak, two other ambassadors, and the governor of Alabama. Sessions, however, was in New York on the day of the anticipated meeting and was unable to attend. The investigation did not identify evidence that the two men met at any point after their September 8th meeting. 8. Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort served on the Trump campaign, including a period as campaign chairman, from March to August 2016. Manafort had connections to Russia through his prior work for Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, and later through his work for a pro-Russian regime in Ukraine. Manafort stayed in touch with these contacts during the campaign period through Konstantin Kalimnik, a longtime Manafort employee who previously ran Manafort's office in Kiev and who the FBI assesses to have ties to Russian intelligence. Manafort instructed Rick Gates, his deputy on the campaign and a longtime employee, to provide Kalimnik with updates on the Trump campaign, including internal polling data, although Manafort claims not to recall that specific instruction. Manafort expected Kalimnik to share that information with others in Ukraine and with Deripaska. Gates periodically sent such polling data to Kalimnik during the campaign. Manafort also twice met Kalimnik in the United States during the campaign period and conveyed campaign information. The second meeting took place on August 2nd, 2016 in New York City. Kalimnik requested the meeting to deliver in person a message from former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, who was then living in Russia. The message was about a peace plan for Ukraine that Manafort has since acknowledged was a backdoor means for Russia to control eastern Ukraine. Several months later, after the presidential election, Kalimnik wrote an email to Manafort expressing the view, which Manafort later said he shared, that the plan's success would require U.S. support to succeed. All that is required to start the process is a very minor wink or slight push from Donald Trump. The email also stated that if Manafort were designated as the U.S. representative and started the process, Yanukovych would ensure his reception in Russia at the very top level. Manafort communicated with Kalimnik about peace plans for Ukraine on at least 4 occasions after their first discussion of the topic on August 2nd. December 2016, the Kalimnik email described above, January 2017, February 2017, and again in the spring of 2018. The office reviewed numerous Manafort email and text communications and asked President Trump about the plan in written questions. The investigation did not uncover evidence of Manafort's passing along information about Ukrainian peace plans to the candidate or anyone else in the campaign or the administration. The office was not, however, able to gain access to all of Manafort's electronic communications. In some instances, messages were sent using encryption applications. And while Manafort denied that he spoke to members of the Trump campaign or the new administration about the peace plan, he lied to the office and the grand jury about the peace plan and his meetings with Kalimnik. And his unreliability on this subject was among the reasons that the district judge found that he had breached his cooperation agreement. The office could not reliably determine Manafort's purpose in sharing internal polling data with Kalimnik during the campaign period. Manafort, redacted grand jury, did not see a downside to sharing campaign information and told Gates that his role in the campaign would be good for business and potentially a way to be made whole for work he previously completed in the Ukraine. As to Deripaska, Manafort claimed that by sharing campaign information with him, Deripaska might see value in their relationship and resolve a disagreement, a reference to one or more outstanding lawsuits. Because of questions about Manafort's credibility and our limited ability to gather evidence on what happened to the polling data after it was sent to Kalimnik, the office could not assess what Kalimnik or others he may have given it to did with it. The office did not identify evidence of a connection between Manafort's sharing polling data and Russia's interference in the election, which had already been reported by U.S. media outlets at the time of the August 2nd meeting. The investigation did not establish that Manafort otherwise coordinated with the Russian government on its election interference efforts. A. Paul Manafort's ties to Russia and Ukraine. Manafort's Russian contacts during the campaign and transition periods stem from his consulting work for Deripaska from approximately 2005 to 2009, and his separate political consulting work in Ukraine from 2005 to 2015, including through his company DMP International LLC, DMI. Kalimnik worked for Manafort in Kiev during this entire period and continued to communicate with Manafort through at least June 2018. Kalimnik, who speaks and writes Ukrainian and Russian, facilitated many of Manafort's communications with Deripaska and Ukrainian oligarchs. 1. Oleg Deripaska consulting work. In approximately 2005, Manafort began working for Deripaska, a Russian oligarch who has a global empire involving aluminum and power companies, and who is closely aligned with Vladimir Putin. A memorandum describing work that Manafort performed for Deripaska in 2005 regarding the post-Soviet republics referenced the need to brief the Kremlin and the benefits that the work could confer on the Putin government. Gates described the work Manafort did for Deripaska as political risk insurance and explained that Deripaska used Manafort to install friendly political officials in countries where Deripaska had business interests. Manafort's company earned tens of millions of dollars from its work for Deripaska and was loaned millions of dollars by Deripaska as well. In 2007, Deripaska invested through another entity in Pericles Emerging Market Partners LP, Pericles, an investment fund created by Manafort and former Manafort business partner Richard Davis. The Pericles Fund was established to pursue investments in Eastern Europe. Deripaska was the sole investor. Gates stated in interviews with the office that the venture led to a deterioration of the relationship between Manafort and Deripaska. In particular, when the fund failed, litigation between Manafort and Deripaska ensued. Gates stated that by 2009, Manafort's business relationship with Deripaska had dried up. According to Gates, various interactions with Deripaska and his intermediaries over the past few years have involved trying to resolve the legal dispute. As described below, in 2016, Manafort, Gates, Kalimnik, and others engaged in efforts to revive the Deripaska relationship and resolve the litigation. 2. Political consulting work. Through Deripaska, Manafort was introduced to Rinat Akhmetov, a Ukrainian oligarch who hired Manafort as a political consultant. In 2005, Akhmetov hired Manafort to engage in political work supporting the Party of Regions, a political party in Ukraine that was generally understood to align with Russia. Manafort assisted the Party of Regions in regaining power, and its candidate, Viktor Yanukovych, won the presidency in 2010. Manafort became a close and trusted political advisor to Yanukovych during his time as president of Ukraine. Yanukovych served in that role until 2014, when he fled to Russia amidst popular protests. 3. Konstantin Kilimnik. Kilimnik is a Russian national who has lived in both Russia and Ukraine and was a longtime Manafort employee. Kilimnik had direct and close access to Yanukovych and his senior entourage, and he facilitated communications between Manafort and his clients, including Yanukovych and multiple Ukrainian oligarchs. Kilimnik also maintained a relationship with Deripaska's deputy, Viktor Boyarkin, a Russian national who previously served in the defense attaché office of the Russian embassy to the United States. Manafort told the office that he did not believe Kilimnik was working as a Russian spy. The FBI, however, assesses that Kilimnik has ties to Russian intelligence. Several pieces of the office's evidence, including witness interviews and emails obtained through court-authorized search warrants, support that assessment. Kilimnik was born on April 27, 1970, in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, then of the Soviet Union, and attended the Military Institute of the Ministry of Defense from 1987 until 1992. Sam Patton, a business partner to Kilimnik, stated that Kilimnik told him that he was a translator in the Russian army for 7 years, and that he later worked in the Russian armament industry, selling arms and military equipment. U.S. government visa records reveal that Kilimnik obtained a visa to travel to the United States with a Russian diplomatic passport in 1997. Kilimnik worked for the International Republican Institute's IRI Moscow office, where he did translation work and general office management from 1998 to 2005. While another official recalled the incident differently, one former associate of Kilimnik's at IRI told the FBI that Kilimnik was fired from his post because his links to Russian intelligence were too strong. The same individual stated that it was well known at IRI that Kilimnik had links to the Russian government. Jonathan Hawker, a British national who was a public relations consultant at FTI Consulting, worked with DMI on a public relations campaign for Yanukovych. After Hawker's work for DMI ended, Kilimnik contacted Hawker about working for a Russian government entity on a public relations project that would promote, in Western and Ukrainian media, Russia's position on its 2014 invasion of Crimea. Gates suspected that Kilimnik was a spy, a view that he shared with Manafort, Hawker, and Alexander van der Swan, an attorney who had worked with DMI on a report for the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Redacted investigative technique. B. Context during Paul Manafort's time with the Trump campaign. 1. Paul Manafort joins the campaign. Manafort served on the Trump campaign from late March to August 19, 2016. On March 29, 2016, the campaign announced that Manafort would serve as the campaign's convention manager. On May 19, 2016, Manafort was promoted to campaign chairman and chief strategist, and Gates, who had been assisting Manafort on the campaign, was appointed deputy campaign chairman. Thomas Barrack and Roger Stone both recommended Manafort to candidate Trump. In early 2016, at Manafort's request, Barrack suggested to Trump that Manafort join the campaign to manage the Republican convention. Stone had worked with Manafort from approximately 1980 until the mid-1990s through various consulting and lobbying firms. Manafort met Trump in 1982 when Trump hired the Black, Manafort, Stone and Kelly lobbying firm. Over the years, Manafort saw Trump at political and social events in New York City and at Stone's wedding, and Trump requested VIP status at the 1988 and 1996 Republican conventions, worked by Manafort. According to Gates, in March 2016, Manafort traveled to Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida to meet with Trump. Trump hired him at that time. Manafort agreed to work on the campaign without pay. Manafort had no meaningful income at this point in time, but resuscitating his domestic political campaign career could be financially beneficial in the future. Gates reported that Manafort intended, if Trump won the presidency, to remain outside the administration and monetize his relationship with the administration. 2. Paul Manafort's campaign period contacts. Immediately upon joining the campaign, Manafort directed Gates to prepare for his review separate memoranda addressed to Deripaska, Akhmetov, Sergei Lyovochkin, and Boris Kolesnikov, the last three being Ukrainian oligarchs who were senior opposition bloc officials. The memoranda described Manafort's appointment to the Trump campaign and indicated his willingness to consult on Ukrainian politics in the future. On March 30th, 2016, Gates emailed the memoranda and a press release announcing Manafort's appointment to Kalimnik for translation and dissemination. Manafort later followed up with Kalimnik to ensure his messages had been delivered, emailing on April 11th, 2016, to ask whether Kalimnik had shown our friends the media coverage of his new role. Kalimnik replied, "Absolutely, every article." Manafort further asked, "How do we use to get whole? Has OVD, Oleg Vladimirovich Deripaska, operation seen?" Kalimnik wrote back the same day, "Yes, I have been sending everything to Viktor Boyarkin, Deripaska's deputy, who has been forwarding the coverage directly to OVD." Gates reported that Manafort said that being hired on the campaign would be good for business and increase the likelihood that Manafort would be paid the approximately $2 million he was owed for previous political consulting work in Ukraine. Gates also explained to the office that Manafort thought his role on the campaign could help confirm that Deripaska had dropped the Pericles lawsuit, and that Gates believed Manafort sent polling data to Deripaska, as discussed further below, so that Deripaska would not move forward with his lawsuit against Manafort. Gates further stated that Deripaska wanted a visa to the United States, that Deripaska could believe that having Manafort in a position inside the campaign or administration might be helpful to Deripaska, and that Manafort's relationship with Trump could help Deripaska in other ways as well. Gates stated, however, that Manafort never told him anything specific about what, if anything, Manafort might be offering Deripaska. Gates also reported that Manafort instructed him in April 2016 or early May 2016 to send Kalimnik campaign internal polling data and other updates so that Kalimnik in turn could share it with Ukrainian oligarchs. Gates understood that the information would also be shared with Deripaska, redacted grand jury. Gates reported to the office that he did not know why Manafort wanted him to send polling information, but Gates thought it was a way to showcase Manafort's work, and Manafort wanted to open doors to jobs after the Trump campaign ended. Gates said that Manafort's instruction included sending internal polling data prepared for the Trump campaign by pollster Tony Fabrizio. Fabrizio had worked with Manafort for years and was brought into the campaign by Manafort. Gates stated that, in accordance with Manafort's instruction, he periodically sent Kalimnik polling data via WhatsApp. Gates then deleted the communications on a daily basis. Gates further told the office that, after Manafort left the campaign in mid-August, Gates sent Kalimnik polling data less frequently, and that the data he sent was more publicly available information and less internal data. Gates' account about polling data is consistent, redacted grand jury, with multiple emails that Kalimnik sent to U.S. associates and press contacts between late July and mid-August of 2016. Those emails referenced internal polling, described the status of the Trump campaign and Manafort's role in it, and assessed Trump's prospects for victory. Manafort did not acknowledge instructing Gates to send Kalimnik internal data. Redacted grand jury. The office also obtained contemporaneous emails that shed light on the purpose of the communications with Deripaska and that are consistent with Gates' account. For example, in response to a July 7, 2016 email from a Ukrainian reporter about Manafort's failed Deripaska-backed investment, Manafort asked Kalimnik whether there had been any movement on this issue with our friend. Gates stated that our friend likely referred to Deripaska, and Manafort told the office that the issue and our biggest interest, as stated below, was a solution to the Deripaska-Pericles issue. Kalimnik replied, I am carefully optimistic on the question of our biggest interest. Our friend, Boyarkin, said there is lately significantly more attention to the campaign in his boss, Deripaska's mind, and he will be most likely looking for ways to reach out to you pretty soon, understanding all the time sensitivity. I am more than sure that it will be resolved, and we will get back to the original relationship with V's boss, Deripaska. 8 minutes later, Manafort replied that Kalimnik should tell Boyarkin's boss, a reference to Deripaska, that if he needs private briefings, we can accommodate. Manafort has alleged to the office that he was willing to brief Deripaska only on public campaign matters, and gave an example why Trump selected Mike Pence as the vice presidential running mate. Manafort said he never gave Deripaska a briefing. Manafort noted that, if Trump won, Deripaska would want to use Manafort to advance whatever interests Deripaska had in the United States and elsewhere. 3. Paul Manafort's 2 campaign period meetings with Konstantin Kalimnik in the United States. Manafort twice met with Kalimnik in person during the campaign period, once in May and again in August 2016. The first meeting took place on May 7, 2016 in New York City. In the days leading to the meeting, Kalimnik had been working to gather information about the political situation in Ukraine. That included information gleaned from a trip that former Party of Regions official Yuri Boyko had recently taken to Moscow, a trip that likely included meetings between Boyko and high-ranking Russian officials. Kalimnik then traveled to Washington, D.C. on or about May 5, 2016. While in Washington, Kalimnik had prearranged meetings with State Department employees. Late on the evening of May 6th, Gates arranged for Kalimnik to take a 3 a.m. train to meet Manafort in New York for breakfast on May 7th. According to Manafort, during the meeting, he and Kalimnik talked about events in Ukraine, and Manafort briefed Kalimnik on the Trump campaign, expecting Kalimnik to pass the information back to individuals in Ukraine and elsewhere. Manafort stated that opposition bloc members recognized Manafort's position on the campaign was an opportunity But Kalimnik did not ask for anything. Kalimnik spoke about a plan of Boyko to boost election participation in the eastern zone of Ukraine, which was the base for the opposition bloc. Kalimnik returned to Washington, D.C. right after the meeting with Manafort. Manafort met with Kalimnik a second time at the Grand Havana Club in New York City on the evening of August 2nd, 2016. The events leading to the meeting are as follows. On July 28, 2016, Kalimnik flew from Kiev to Moscow. The next day, Kalimnik wrote to Manafort requesting that they meet, using coded language about a conversation he had that day. In an email with a subject line, Black Caviar, Kalimnik wrote, I met today with the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar several years ago. We spent about 5 hours talking about his story, and I have several important messages from him to you. He asked me to go and brief you on our conversation. I said I have to run it by you first, but in principle I am prepared to do it. It has to do about the future of his country and is quite interesting. Manafort identified the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar as Yanukovych. He explained that in 2010, he and Yanukovych had lunch to celebrate the recent presidential election. Yanukovych gave Manafort a large jar of black caviar that was worth approximately $30,000 to $40,000. Manafort's identification of Yanukovych as the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar is consistent with Kalimnik being in Moscow, where Yanukovych resided. When Kalimnik wrote, I met today with the guy, and with a December 2016 email in which Kalimnik referred to Yanukovych as BG, redacted, grand jury. Manafort replied to Kalimnik's July 29th email, Tuesday, August 2nd is best. Tuesday or Wednesday in NYC. 3 days later, on July 31st, 2016, Kalimnik flew back to Kiev from Moscow, and on that same day wrote to Manafort that he needed about 2 hours for their meeting, because it is a long caviar story to tell. Kalimnik wrote that he would arrive at JFK on August 2nd at 7:30 p.m., and he and Manafort agreed to a late dinner that night. Documentary evidence, including flight, phone, and hotel records, and the timing of text messages exchanged, confirms the dinner took place as planned on August 2nd. As to the contents of the meeting itself, the accounts of Manafort and Gates, who arrived late to the dinner, differ in certain respects, but their versions of events, when assessed alongside available documentary evidence and what Kalimnik told business associate Sam Patton, indicate that at least 3 principal topics were discussed. First, Manafort and Kalimnik discussed a plan to resolve the ongoing political problems in Ukraine by creating an autonomous republic in its more industrialized eastern region of Donbass, and having Yanukovych, the Ukrainian president ousted in 2014, elected to head that republic. That plan, Manafort later acknowledged, constituted a backdoor means for Russia to control eastern Ukraine. Manafort initially said that, if he had not cut off the discussion, Kalimnik would have asked Manafort in the August 2nd meeting to convince Trump to come out in favor of the peace plan, and Yanukovych would have expected Manafort to use his connections in Europe and Ukraine to support the plan. Manafort also initially told the office that he had said to Kalimnik that the plan was crazy, that the discussion ended, and that he did not recall Kalimnik asking Manafort to reconsider the plan after their August 2nd meeting. Manafort said, redacted grand jury, that he reacted negatively to Yanukovych's sending, years later, an urgent request when Yanukovych needed him. When confronted with an email written by Kalimnik on or about December 8, 2016, however, Manafort acknowledged Kalimnik raised the peace plan again in that email. Manafort ultimately acknowledged Kalimnik also raised the peace plan in January and February 2017 meetings with Manafort, redacted grand jury. Second, Manafort briefed Kalimnik on the state of the Trump campaign and Manafort's plan to win the election. That briefing encompassed the campaign's messaging and its internal polling data. According to Gates, it also included discussion of battleground states, which Manafort identified as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Manafort did not refer explicitly to battleground states in his telling of the August 2nd discussion, redacted grand jury. Third, according to Gates, and what Kalimnik told Patton, Manafort and Kalimnik discussed two sets of financial disputes related to Manafort's previous work in the region. Those consisted of the unresolved Deripaska lawsuit and the funds that the opposition bloc owed to Manafort for his political consulting work and how Manafort might be able to obtain payment. After the meeting, Gates and Manafort both stated that they left separately from Kalimnik because they knew the media was tracking Manafort and wanted to avoid media reporting on his connections to Kalimnik. C. Post-resignation activities. Manafort resigned from the Trump campaign in mid-August 2016, approximately 2 weeks after his second meeting with Kalimnik, amidst negative media reporting about his political consulting work for the pro-Russian Party of Regions in Ukraine. Despite his resignation, Manafort continued to offer advice to various campaign officials throughout the November election. Manafort told Gates that he still spoke with Kushner, Bannon, and candidate Trump, and some of those post-resignation contacts are documented in emails. For example, on October 21st, 2016, Manafort sent Kushner an email and attached a strategy memorandum proposing that the campaign make the case against Clinton as the failed and corrupt champion of the establishment, and that WikiLeaks provides the Trump campaign the ability to make the case in a very credible way by using the words of Clinton, its campaign officials, and DNC members. Later, in a November 5th, 2016 email to Kushner entitled "Securing the Victory," Manafort stated that he was really feeling good about our prospects on Tuesday and focusing on preserving the victory, and that he was concerned the Clinton campaign would respond to a loss by moving immediately to discredit the Trump victory and claim voter fraud and cyber fraud, including the claim that the Russians have hacked into the voting machines and tampered with the results. Trump was elected president on November 8, 2016. Manafort told the office that, in the wake of Trump's victory, he was not interested in an administration job. Manafort instead preferred to stay on the outside and monetize his campaign position to generate business given his familiarity and relationship with Trump and the incoming administration. Manafort appeared to follow that plan as he traveled to the Middle East, Cuba, South Korea, Japan, and China, and was paid to explain what a Trump presidency would entail. Manafort's activities in early 2017 included meetings relating to Ukraine and Russia. The first meeting, which took place in Madrid, Spain in January 2017, was with Georgy Oganov. Oganov, who had previously worked at the Russian embassy in the United States, was a senior executive at a Deripaska company and was believed to report directly to Deripaska. Manafort initially denied attending the meeting. When he later acknowledged it, he claimed that the meeting had been arranged by his lawyers and concerned only the Pericles lawsuit. Other evidence, however, provides reason to doubt Manafort's statement that the sole topic of the meeting was the Pericles lawsuit. In particular, text messages to Manafort from a number associated with Kalimnik suggest that Kalimnik and Boyarkin, not Manafort's counsel, had arranged the meeting between Manafort and Oganov. Kalimnik's message states that the meeting was supposed to be not about money or Pericles, but instead about recreating the old friendship, ostensibly between Manafort and Deripaska, and talking about global politics. Manafort also replied by text that he needs this finished before January 20th, which appears to be a reference to resolving Pericles before the inauguration. On January 15, 2017, 3 days after his return from Madrid, Manafort emailed K.T. McFarland, who was at that time designated to be Deputy National Security Advisor and was formally appointed to that position on January 20th, 2017. Manafort's January 15th email to McFarland stated, "I have some important information I want to share that I picked up on my travels over the last month." Manafort told the office that the email referred to an issue regarding Cuba, not Russia or Ukraine, and Manafort had traveled to Cuba in the past month. Either way, McFarland, who was advised by Flynn not to respond to the Manafort inquiry, appears not to have responded to Manafort. Manafort told the office that around the time of the presidential inauguration in January, he met with Kalimnik and Ukrainian oligarch Serhiy Lyovochkin at the Westin Hotel in Alexandria, Virginia. During this meeting, Kalimnik again discussed the Yanukovych peace plan that he had broached at the August 2nd meeting, and in a detailed December 8, 2016 message found in Kalimnik's DMP email account. In that December 8th email, which Manafort acknowledged having read, Kalimnik wrote, "All that is required to start the process is a very minor wink or slight push from DT, an apparent reference to President-elect Trump, and a decision to authorize you to be a special representative and manage this process." Kalimnik assured Manafort with that authority he could start the process and within 10 days visit Russia. Yanukovych guarantees you reception at the very top level, and that DT could have peace in Ukraine basically within a few months after inauguration. As noted above, redacted grand jury, and statements to the office, Manafort sought to qualify his engagement on and support for the plan. Redacted grand jury. On February 26, 2017, Manafort met Kalimnik in Madrid, where Kalimnik had flown from Moscow. In his first 2 interviews with the office, Manafort denied meeting with Kalimnik on his Madrid trip, and then, after being confronted with documentary evidence that Kalimnik was in Madrid at the same time as him, recognized that he had met him in Madrid. Manafort said that Kalimnik had updated him on a criminal investigation into so-called black ledger payments to Manafort that was being conducted by Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau. Redacted grand jury. Manafort remained in contact with Kalimnik throughout 2017 and into the spring of 2018. Those contacts included matters pertaining to the criminal charges brought by the office and the Ukraine peace plan. In early 2018, Manafort retained his longtime polling firm to craft a draft poll in Ukraine, sent the pollsters a 3-page primer on the plan sent by Kalimnik, and worked with Kalimnik to formulate the polling questions. The primer sent to the pollsters specifically called for the United States and President Trump to support the autonomous Republic of Donbass with Yanukovych as Prime Minister. And a series of questions in the draft poll asked for opinions on Yanukovych's role in resolving the conflict in Donbass. The poll was not solely about Donbass. It also sought participants' views on leaders apart from Yanukovych as they pertained to the 2019 Ukraine presidential election. The office has not uncovered evidence that Manafort brought the Ukraine peace plan to the attention of the Trump campaign or the Trump administration. Kilimnik continued his efforts to promote the peace plan to the executive branch, for example, U.S. Department of State, into the summer of 2018. End of Section 8. Recording by Lynn Jarrow.
Section 9.
A report on the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Report on the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election by Robert Mueller. Section 9, Part 4. Russian government links to and contacts with the Trump campaign. Section B. Post-election and transition period contacts. Trump was elected president on November 8, 2016. Beginning immediately after the election, individuals connected to the Russian government started contacting officials on the Trump campaign and transition team through multiple channels. Sometimes through Russian Ambassador Kislyak, and at other times through individuals who sought reliable contacts through U.S. persons not formally tied to the campaign or transition team. The most senior levels of the Russian government encouraged these efforts. The investigation did not establish that these efforts reflected or constituted coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia in its election interference activities. 1. Immediate post-election activity. As soon as news broke that Trump had been elected president, Russian government officials and prominent Russian businessmen began trying to make inroads into the new administration. They appeared not to have pre-existing contacts and struggled to connect with senior officials around the president-elect. As explained below, those efforts entailed both official contact through the Russian embassy in the United States and outreaches sanctioned at high levels of the Russian government through business rather than political contacts. A. Outreach from the Russian government. At approximately 3 a.m. on election night, Trump campaign press secretary Hope Hicks received a telephone call on her personal cell phone from a person who sounded foreign but was calling from a number with a DC area code. Although Hicks had a hard time understanding the person, she could make out the words, quote, Putin call, unquote. Hicks told the caller to send her an email. The following morning, on November 9, 2016, Sergei Kuznetsov, an official at the Russian embassy to the United States, emailed Hicks from his Gmail address with the subject line, quote, message from Putin, unquote. Attached to the email was a message from Putin in both English and Russian, which Kuznetsov asked Hicks to convey to the president-elect. In the message, Putin offered his congratulations to Trump for his electoral victory, stating he, quote, looked forward to working with Trump on leading Russian-American relations out of crisis, unquote. Hicks forwarded the email to Kushner asking, quote, can you look into this? Don't want to get duped, but don't want to blow off Putin, unquote. Kushner stated in congressional testimony that he believed that it would be possible to verify the authenticity of the forwarded email through the Russian ambassador, whom Kushner had previously met in April 2016. Unable to recall the Russian ambassador's name, Kushner emailed Dmitry Symes of CNI, whom he had consulted previously about Russia. See Volume 1, Section 4A4, Supra, and asked, quote, "What is the name of Russian ambassador?" unquote. Kushner forwarded Symes' response, which identified Kislyak by name, to Hicks. After checking with Kushner to see what he had learned, Hicks conveyed Putin's letter to transition officials. 5 days later, on November 14, 2016, Trump and Putin spoke by phone in the presence of transition team members, including incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. B. High-level encouragement of contacts through alternative channels. As Russian officials in the United States reached out to the president-elect and his team, a number of Russian individuals working in the private sector began their own efforts to make contact. Pyotr Avin, a Russian national who heads Alfa Bank, Russia's largest commercial bank, described to the office interactions with Putin during this time period that might account for the flurry of Russian activity. Avin told the office that he is one of approximately 50 wealthy Russian businessmen who regularly meet with Putin in the Kremlin. These 50 men are often referred to as oligarchs. Avin told the office that he met on a quarterly basis with Putin, including in the fourth quarter, Q4, of 2016, shortly after the U.S. presidential election. Avin said that he took these meetings seriously and understood that any suggestions or critiques that Putin made during these meetings were implicit directives, and that there would be consequences for Avin if he did not follow through. As was typical, the 2016 Q4 meeting with Putin was preceded by a preparatory meeting with Putin's chief of staff, Anton Lino. According to Avin, at his Q4 2016 one-on-one meeting with Putin, Putin raised the prospect that the United States would impose additional sanctions on Russian interests, including sanctions against Avin and/or Alfa Bank. Putin suggested that Avin needed to take steps to protect himself and Alfa Bank. Avin also testified that Putin spoke of the difficulty faced by the Russian government in getting in touch with the incoming Trump administration. According to Avin, Putin indicated that he did not know with whom formally to speak and generally did not know the people around the president-elect. Avin, redaction, grand jury, told Putin he would take steps to protect himself and the Alfa Bank shareholders from potential sanctions, and one of those steps would be to try to reach out to the incoming administration to establish a line of communication. Avin described Putin responding with skepticism about Avin's prospect for success. According to Avin, although Putin did not expressly direct him to reach out to the Trump transition team, Avin understood that Putin expected him to try to respond to the concerns he had raised. Avin's efforts are described in Volume 1, Section 4B5, Infra. 2. Kirill Dmitriev's transition-era outreach to the incoming administration. Avin's description of his interactions with Putin is consistent with the behavior of Kirill Dmitriev, a Russian national who heads Russia's sovereign wealth fund and is closely connected to Putin. Dmitriev undertook efforts to meet members of the incoming Trump administration in the months after the election. Dmitriev asked a close business associate who worked for the United Arab Emirates, UAE, Royal Court, George Nader, to introduce him to Trump transition officials, and Nader eventually arranged a meeting in the Seychelles between Dmitriev and Eric Prince, a Trump campaign supporter and an associate of Steve Bannon. In addition, the UAE National Security Advisor introduced Dmitriev to a hedge fund manager and friend of Jared Kushner, Rick Gerson, in late September 2016. In December 2016 and January 2017, Dmitriev and Gerson worked on a proposal for reconciliation between the United States and Russia, which Dmitriev implied he cleared through Putin. Gerson provided that proposal to Kushner before the inauguration, and Kushner later gave copies to Bannon and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. A. Background. Dmitriev is a Russian national who was appointed CEO of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Russian Direct Investment Fund, RDIF, when it was founded in 2011. Dmitriev reported directly to Putin and frequently referred to Putin as his boss. RDIF has co-invested in various projects with UAE sovereign wealth funds. Dmitriev regularly interacted with Nader, a senior advisor to UAE Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, Crown Prince Mohammed, in connection with RDIF's dealings with the UAE. Putin wanted Dmitriev to be in charge of both the financial and the political relationship between Russia and the Gulf states, in part because Dmitriev had been educated in the West and spoke English fluently. Nader considered Dmitriev to be Putin's interlocutor in the Gulf region and would relay Dmitriev's views directly to Crown Prince Mohammed. Nader developed contacts with both U.S. presidential campaigns during the 2016 election and kept Dmitriev abreast of his efforts to do so. According to Nader, Dmitriev said that his and the government of Russia's preference was for candidate Trump to win, and asked Nader to assist him in meeting members of the Trump campaign. Redaction, Grand Jury. Nader did not introduce Dmitriev to anyone associated with the Trump campaign before the election. Paragraph redacted, Grand Jury. Eric Prince is a businessman who had relationships with various individuals associated with the Trump campaign, including Steve Bannon, Donald Trump Jr., and Roger Stone. Prince did not have a formal role in the campaign, although he offered to host a fundraiser for Trump and sent unsolicited policy papers on issues such as foreign policy, trade, and Russian election interference to Bannon. After the election, Prince frequently visited transition offices at Trump Tower, primarily to meet with Bannon, but on occasion to meet with Michael Flynn and others. Prince and Bannon would discuss, inter alia, foreign policy issues and Prince's recommendations regarding who should be appointed to fill key national security positions. Although Prince was not formally affiliated with the transition, Nader, redaction Grand Jury, received assurances, redaction Grand Jury, that the incoming administration considered Prince a trusted associate. B. Kirill Dmitriev's post-election contacts with the incoming administration. Soon after midnight on election night, Dmitriev messaged, redaction investigative technique, who was traveling to New York to attend the 2016 World Chess Championship, redaction investigative technique. Dmitry Peskov, the Russian Federation's press secretary, who was also attending the World Chess Championship, redactions, investigative technique. At approximately 2:40 a.m. on November 9, 2016, news reports stated that candidate Clinton had called President-elect Trump to concede at, redactions, investigative technique, wrote to Dmitriev, quote, Putin has won, unquote. Later that morning, Dmitriev contacted Nader, who was in New York, to request a meeting with the key people in the incoming administration as soon as possible in the light of the great results. He asked Nader to convey to the incoming administration that, quote, we want to start rebuilding the relationship in whatever is a comfortable pace for them. We understand all of the sensitivities and are not in a rush, unquote. Dmitriev and Nader had previously discussed Nader introducing him to the contacts Nader had made within the Trump campaign. Dmitriev also told Nader that he would ask Putin for permission to travel to the United States, where he would be able to speak to media outlets about the positive impact of Trump's election and the need for reconciliation between the United States and Russia. Later that day, Dmitriev flew to New York, where Peskov was separately traveling to attend a chess tournament. Dmitriev invited Nader to the opening of the tournament and noted that if there was, quote, a chance to see anyone key from the Trump camp, unquote, he, quote, would love to start building for the future, unquote. Dmitriev also asked Nader to invite Kushner to the event so that he, Dmitriev, could meet him. Nader did not pass along Dmitriev's invitation to anyone connected with the incoming administration, although one World Chess Federation official recalled hearing from an attendee that President-elect Trump had stopped by the tournament. The investigation did not establish that Trump or any campaign or transition team official attended the event, and the president's written answers denied that he had. Nader stated that Dmitriev continued to press him to set up a meeting with transition officials and was particularly focused on Kushner and Trump Jr. Dmitriev told Nader that Putin would be very grateful to Nader and that a meeting would make history. Redactions. Grand jury. According to Nader, Dmitriev was very anxious to connect with the incoming administration and told Nader that he would try other routes to do so besides Nader himself. Nader did not ultimately introduce Dmitriev to anyone associated with the incoming administration during Dmitriev's post-election trip to New York. In early December 2016, Dmitriev again broached the topic of meeting incoming administration officials with Nader in January or February. Dmitriev sent Nader a list of publicly available quotes of Dmitriev speaking positively about Donald Trump, quote, in case they were helpful, unquote. C. Erik Prince and Kirill Dmitriev meet in the Seychelles. 1. George Nader and Erik Prince arranged Seychelles meeting with Dmitriev. Nader traveled to New York in early January 2017 and had lunchtime and dinner meetings with Erik Prince on January 3, 2017. Nader and Prince discussed Dmitriev. Nader informed Prince that the Russians were looking to build a link with the incoming Trump administration. Redaction, grand jury. He told Prince that Dmitriev had been pushing Nader to introduce him to someone from the incoming administration. Redaction, grand jury. Nader suggested, in light of Prince's relationship with transition team officials, that Prince and Dmitriev meet to discuss issues of mutual concern. Redaction, grand jury. Prince told Nader that he needed to think further about it and to check with transition team officials. After his dinner with Prince, Nader sent Prince a link to a Wikipedia entry about Dmitriev and sent Dmitriev a message stating that he had just met, quote, with some key people within the family and inner circle, unquote, a reference to Prince, and that he had spoken at length and positively about Dmitriev. Nader told Dmitriev that the people he had met had asked for Dmitriev's bio, and Dmitriev replied that he would update and send it. Nader later received from Dmitriev 2 files concerning Dmitriev. One was a 2-page biography, and the other was a list of Dmitriev's positive quotes about Donald Trump. The next morning, Nader forwarded the message and attachments Dmitriev had sent him to Prince. Nader wrote to Prince that these documents were the versions to be used with some additional details for them, unquote, with them referring to members of the incoming administration. Prince opened the attachment at Trump Tower within an hour of receiving them. Prince stated that while he was at Trump Tower that day, he spoke with Kellyanne Conway, Wilbur Ross, called Steve Mnuchin and others while waiting to see Bannon. Cell site location data for Prince's mobile phone indicates that Prince remained at Trump Tower for approximately 3 hours. Prince said that he could not recall whether, during those 3 hours, he met with Bannon and discussed Dmitriev with him. Redaction, Grand Jury. Prince booked a ticket to the Seychelles on January 7, 2017. The following day, Nader wrote to Dmitriev that he had a pleasant surprise for him, namely that he had arranged for Dmitriev to meet a special guest from the new team, referring to Prince. Nader asked Dmitriev if he could come to the Seychelles for the meeting on January 12, 2017, and Dmitriev agreed. The following day, Dmitriev sought assurance from Nader that the Seychelles meeting would be worthwhile. Redaction, Grand Jury. Dmitriev was not enthusiastic about the idea of meeting with Prince, and Nader assured him that Prince wielded influence with the incoming administration. Nader wrote to Dmitriev, quote, "This guy, Prince, is designated by Steve Bannon to meet you. I know him, and he is very, very well connected and trusted by the new team. His sister is now a minister of education," unquote. According to Nader, Prince had led him to believe that Bannon was aware of Prince's upcoming meeting with Dmitriev, and Prince acknowledged that it was fair for Nader to think that Prince would pass information on to the transition team. Bannon, however, told the office that Prince did not tell him in advance about his meeting with Dmitriev. 2. The Seychelles meetings. Dmitriev arrived with his wife in the Seychelles on January 11, 2017, and checked into the Four Seasons Resort where Crown Prince Mohammed and Nader were staying. Prince arrived that same day. Prince and Dmitriev met for the first time that afternoon in Nader's villa, with Nader present. The initial meeting lasted approximately 30 to 45 minutes. Redaction, Grand Jury. Prince described the 8 years of the Obama administration in negative terms and stated that he was looking forward to a new era of cooperation and conflict resolution. According to Prince, he told Dmitriev that Bannon was effective, if not conventional, and that Prince provided policy papers to Bannon. Redactions, Grand Jury. The topic of Russian interference in the 2016 election did not come up. Redaction, Grand Jury. Prince added that he would inform Bannon about his meeting with Dmitriev, and that if there was interest in continuing the discussion, Bannon or someone else on the transition team would do so. Redaction, Grand Jury. Afterwards, Prince returned to his room, where he learned that a Russian aircraft carrier had sailed to Libya, which led him to call Nader and ask him to set up another meeting with Dmitriev. According to Nader, Prince called and said he had checked with his associates back home and needed to convey to Dmitriev that Libya was off the table. Nader wrote to Dmitriev that Prince had, quote, "received an urgent message that he needs to convey to you immediately," unquote, and arranged for himself, Dmitriev, and Prince to meet at a restaurant on the Four Seasons property. At the second meeting, Prince told Dmitriev that the United States could not accept any Russian involvement in Libya because it would make the situation much worse. Redaction, Grand Jury. After the brief second meeting concluded, Nader and Dmitriev discussed what had transpired. Dmitriev told Nader that he was disappointed in his meetings with Prince for 2 reasons. First, he believed the Russians needed to be communicating with someone who had more authority within the incoming administration than Prince had. Second, he had hoped to have a discussion of greater substance, such as outlining a strategic roadmap for both countries to follow. Dmitriev told Nader that, redaction, Grand Jury, Prince's comments, redaction, Grand Jury, were insulting, grand jury. Hours after the second meeting, Prince sent 2 text messages to Bannon from the Seychelles. As described further below, investigators were unable to obtain the content of these or other messages between Prince and Bannon, and the investigation also did not identify evidence of any further communication between Prince and Dmitriev after their meetings in the Seychelles. 3. Eric Prince's meeting with Steve Bannon after the Seychelles trip. After the Seychelles meetings, Prince told Nader that he would inform Bannon about his discussion with Dmitriev and would convey that someone within the Russian power structure was interested in seeking better relations with the incoming administration. On January 12, 2017, Prince contacted Bannon's personal assistant to set up a meeting for the following week. Several days later, Prince messaged her again, asking about Bannon's schedule. Prince said that he met Bannon at Bannon's home after returning to the United States in mid-January and briefed him about several topics, including his meeting with Dmitriev. Prince told the office that he explained to Bannon that Dmitriev was the head of a Russian sovereign wealth fund and was interested in improving relations between the United States and Russia. Prince had on his cell phone a screenshot of Dmitriev's Wikipedia page dated January 16, 2017, and Prince told the office that he likely showed that image to Bannon. Prince also believed he provided Bannon with Dmitriev's contact information. According to Prince, Bannon instructed Prince not to follow up with Dmitriev, and Prince had the impression that the issue was not a priority for Bannon. Prince related that Bannon did not appear angry, just relatively uninterested. Bannon, by contrast, told the office that he never discussed with Prince anything regarding Dmitriev, RDIF, or any meetings with Russian individuals or people associated with Putin. Bannon also stated that had Prince mentioned such a meeting, Bannon would have remembered it, and Bannon would have objected to such a meeting having taken place. The conflicting accounts provided by Bannon and Prince could not be independently clarified by reviewing their communications because neither one was able to produce any of the messages they exchanged in the time period surrounding the Seychelles meeting. Prince's phone contained no text messages prior to March 2017, though provider records indicate that he and Bannon exchanged dozens of messages. Prince denied deleting any messages, but claimed he did not know why there were no messages on his device before March 2017. Bannon's devices similarly contained no messages in the relevant time period, and Bannon also stated that he did not know why messages did not appear on his device. Bannon told the office that during both the months before and after the Seychelles meeting, he regularly used his personal BlackBerry and personal email for work-related communications, including those with Prince, and he took no steps to preserve these work communications. D. Kirill Dmitriev's post-election contact with Rick Gerson regarding U.S.-Russia relations. Dmitriev's contacts during the transition period were not limited to those facilitated by Nader. In approximately late November 2016, the UAE National Security Advisor introduced Dmitriev to Rick Gerson, a friend of Jared Kushner, who runs a hedge fund in New York. Gerson stated that he had no formal role in the transition and had no involvement in the Trump campaign, other than occasional casual discussions about the campaign with Kushner. After the election, Gerson assisted the transition by arranging meetings for transition officials with former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair and a UAE delegation led by Crown Prince Mohammed. When Dmitriev and Gerson met, they principally discussed potential joint ventures between Gerson's hedge fund and RDIF. Dmitriev was interested in improved economic cooperation between the United States and Russia and asked Gerson who he should meet with in the incoming administration who would be helpful toward this goal. Gerson replied that he would try to figure out the best way to arrange appropriate introductions, but noted that confidentiality would be required because of the sensitivity of holding such meetings before the new administration took power and before cabinet nominees had been confirmed by the Senate. Gerson said he would ask Kushner and Michael Flynn who the key person or people were on the topics of reconciliation with Russia, joint security concerns, and economic matters. Dmitriev told Gerson that he had been tasked by Putin to develop and execute a reconciliation plan between the United States and Russia. He noted in a text message to Gerson that if Russia was, quote, approached with respect and willingness to understand our position, we can have major breakthroughs quickly, unquote. Gerson and Dmitriev exchanged ideas in December 2016 about what such a reconciliation plan would include. Gerson told the office that the transition team had not asked him to engage in these discussions with Dmitriev, and that he did so on his own initiative and as a private citizen. On January 9, 2017, the same day he asked Nader whether meeting Prince would be worthwhile, Dmitriev sent his biography to Gerson and asked him if he could, quote, share it with Jared or somebody else very senior in the team so that they know we are focused from our side on improving the relationship, and my boss asked me to play a key role in that, end quote. Dmitriev also asked Gerson if he knew Prince, and if Prince was somebody important or worth spending time with. After his trip to the Seychelles, Dmitriev told Gerson that Bannon had asked Prince to meet with Dmitriev, and that the two had had a positive meeting. On January 16, 2017, Dmitriev consolidated the ideas for U.S.-Russia reconciliation that he and Gerson had been discussing into a two-page document that listed 5 main points. 1. Jointly fighting terrorism. 2. Jointly engaging in anti-weapons of mass destruction efforts. 3. Developing win-win economic and investment initiatives. 4. Maintaining an honest, open, and continual dialogue regarding issues of disagreement. And 5. Ensuring proper communication and trust by key people from each country. On January 18, 2017, Gerson gave a copy of the document to Kushner. Kushner had not heard of Dmitriev at that time. Gerson explained that Dmitriev was the head of RDIF, and Gerson may have alluded to Dmitriev's being well connected. Kushner placed the document in a file and said he would get it to the right people. Kushner ultimately gave one copy of the document to Bannon and another to Rex Tillerson. According to Kushner, neither of them followed up with Kushner about it. On January 19, 2017, Dmitriev sent Nader a copy of the two-page document, telling him that this was, quote, a view from our side that I discussed in my meeting on the islands and with you and with our friends. Please share with them. We believe this is a good foundation to start from, unquote. Gerson informed Dmitriev that he had given the document to Kushner soon after delivering it. On January 26, 2017, Dmitriev wrote to Gerson that his boss, an apparent reference to Putin, was asking if there had been any feedback on the proposal. Dmitriev said, quote, we do not want to rush things and move at a comfortable speed. At the same time, my boss asked me to try to have the key U.S. meetings in the next 2 weeks if possible, unquote. He informed Gerson that Putin and President Trump would speak by phone that Saturday and noted that that information was very confidential. The same day, Dmitriev wrote to Nader that he had seen his boss again yesterday, who had, quote, emphasized that this is a great priority for us and that we need to build this communication channel to avoid bureaucracy, unquote. On January 28, 2017, Dmitriev texted Nader that he wanted, quote, to see if I can confirm to my boss that your friends may use some of the ideas from the two-pager I sent you in the telephone call that will happen at 12 EST, unquote. An apparent reference to the call scheduled between President Trump and Putin. Nader replied, quote, definitely, paper was so submitted to team by Rick and me. They took it seriously, unquote. After the call between President Trump and Putin occurred, Dmitriev wrote to Nader that, quote, the call went very well. My boss wants me to continue making some public statements that U.S.-Russia cooperation is good and important, unquote. Gerson also wrote to Dmitriev to say that the call had gone well, and Dmitriev replied that the document that they had drafted together, quote, played an important role, unquote. Gerson and Dmitriev appeared to stop communicating with one another in approximately March 2017, when the investment deal they had been working on together showed no signs of progressing. 3. Ambassador Kisljak's meeting with Jared Kushner and Michael Flynn in Trump Tower following the election. On November 16, 2016, Catherine Vargas, an executive assistant to Kushner, received a request for a meeting with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. That same day, Vargas sent Kushner an email with the subject, quote, missed call, Russian Ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Ivanovich Kislyak, unquote. The text of the email read, quote, read, setting up a time to meet with you on 12/1, LMK, how to proceed, unquote. Kushner responded in relevant part, quote, I think I do this one. Confirm with Dmitry Simes of CNI that this is the right guy, unquote. After reaching out to a colleague of Simes at CNI, Vargas reported back to Kushner that Kislyak was, quote, the best go-to guy for routine matters in the U.S., unquote. While Yuri Ushakov, a Russian foreign policy advisor, was the contact for, quote, more direct/substantial matters, unquote. Bob Forrestman, the UBS investment bank executive who had previously tried to transmit to candidate Trump an invitation to speak at an economic forum in Russia, see Volume 1, Section 4A1D2, Supra, may have provided similar information to the transition team. According to Forrestman, at the end of an early December 2016 meeting with incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and his designated deputy, KT McFarland, in New York, Flynn asked Forrestman for his thoughts on Kislyak. Forrestman had not met Kislyak, but told Flynn that while Kislyak was an important person, Kislyak did not have a direct line to Putin. Forrestman subsequently traveled to Moscow, inquired of a source he believed to be close to Putin, and heard back from that source that Ushakov would be the official channel for the incoming U.S. National Security Advisor. Forrestman acknowledged that Flynn had not asked him to undertake that inquiry in Russia, but told the office that he nonetheless felt obligated to report the information back to Flynn, and that he worked to get a face-to-face meeting with Flynn in January 2017 so that he could do so. Email correspondence suggests that the meeting ultimately went forward, but Flynn has no recollection of it or of the earlier December meeting. The investigation did not identify evidence of Flynn or Kushner meeting with Ushakov after being given his name. In the meantime, although he had already formed the impression that Kislyak was not necessarily the right point of contact, Kushner went forward with the meeting that Kislyak had requested on November 16. It took place at Trump Tower on November 30, 2016. At Kushner's invitation, Flynn also attended. Bannon was invited, but did not attend. During the meeting, which lasted approximately 30 minutes, Kushner expressed a desire on the part of the incoming administration to start afresh with U.S.-Russian relations. Kushner also asked Kislyak to identify the best person, whether Kislyak or someone else, with whom to direct future discussions, someone who had contact with Putin and the ability to speak for him. The three men also discussed U.S. policy towards Syria, and Kislyak floated the idea of having Russian generals brief the transition team on the topic using a secure communications line. After Flynn explained that there was no secure line in the transition team offices, Kushner asked Kislyak if they could communicate using secure facilities at the Russian embassy. Kislyak quickly rejected that idea. 4. Jared Kushner's meeting with Sergei Gorkov. On December 6, 2016, the Russian embassy reached out to Kushner's assistant to set up a second meeting between Kislyak and Kushner. Kushner declined several proposed meeting dates, but Kushner's assistant indicated that Kislyak was very insistent about securing a second meeting. Kushner told the office that he did not want to take another meeting because he had already decided Kislyak was not the right channel for him to communicate with Russia. So he arranged to have one of his assistants, Avi Berkowitz, meet with Kislyak in his stead. Although embassy official Sergei Kuznetsov wrote to Berkowitz that Kislyak thought it important to, quote, continue the conversation with Mr. Kushner in person, unquote, Kislyak nonetheless agreed to meet instead with Berkowitz once it became apparent that Kushner was unlikely to take a meeting. Berkowitz met with Kislyak on December 12, 2016 at Trump Tower. The meeting lasted only a few minutes, during which Kislyak indicated that he wanted Kushner to meet someone who had a direct line to Putin, Sergei Gorkov, the head of the Russian government-owned bank, Vneshekonombank, VEB. Kushner agreed to meet with Gorkov. The one-on-one meeting took place the next day, December 12, 2016, at the Colony Capitol building in Manhattan, where Kushner had previously scheduled meetings. VEB was and is the subject of Department of Treasury economic sanctions imposed in response to Russia's annexation of Crimea. Kushner did not, however, recall any discussion during his meeting with Gorkov about the sanctions against VEB or sanctions more generally. Kushner stated in an interview that he did not engage in any preparation for the meeting and that no one on the transition team even did a Google search for Gorkov's name. At the start of the meeting, Gorkov presented Kushner with two gifts, a painting and a bag of soil from the town in Belarus where Kushner's family originated. The accounts from Kushner and Gorkov differ as to whether the meeting was diplomatic or business in nature. Kushner told the office that the meeting was diplomatic, with Gorkov expressing disappointment with U.S.-Russia relations under President Obama and hopes for improved relations with the incoming administration. According to Kushner, although Gorkov told Kushner a little bit about his bank and made some statements about the Russian economy, the two did not discuss Kushner's companies or private business dealings of any kind. At the time of the meeting, Kushner Companies had a debt obligation coming due on the building it owned at 666 Fifth Avenue, and there had been public reporting both about efforts to secure lending on the property and possible conflicts of interest for Kushner arising out of his company's borrowing from foreign lenders. In contrast, in a 2017 public statement, VEB suggested Gorkov met with Kushner in Kushner's capacity as CEO of Kushner Companies for the purpose of discussing business rather than as a part of a diplomatic effort. In particular, VEB characterized Gorkov's meeting with Kushner as a part of a series of roadshow meetings with representatives of major U.S. banks and business circles, which included negotiations and discussion of the most promising business lines and sectors. Forestman The investment bank executive mentioned in Volume 1, Sections 4A1 and 4B3 Supra told the office that he met with Gorkov and VEB Deputy Chairman Nikolai Tsukomsky in Moscow just before Gorkov left for New York to meet Kushner. According to Forsman, Gorkov and Tsukomsky told him that they were traveling to New York to discuss post-election issues with U.S. financial institutions, and that their trip was sanctioned by Putin and that they would be reporting back to Putin upon their return. The investigation did not resolve the apparent conflict in the accounts of Kushner and Gorkov or determined whether the meeting was diplomatic in nature, as Kushner stated, focused on business, as VEB's public statement indicated, or whether it involved some combination of those matters or other matters. Regardless, the investigation did not identify evidence that Kushner and Gorkov engaged in any substantive follow-up after the meeting. Rather, a few days after the meeting, Gorkov's assistant texted Kushner's assistant, quote, "Hi, please inform your side that the information about the meeting had a very positive response," unquote. Over the following weeks, the two assistants exchanged a handful of additional cordial texts. On February 8, 2017, Gorkov's assistant texted Kushner's assistant, Berkowitz, to try to set up another meeting and followed up by text at least twice in the days that followed. According to Berkowitz, he did not respond to the meeting request in light of the press coverage regarding the Russia investigation and did not tell Kushner about the meeting request. 5. Pyotr Oven's outreach efforts to the transition team. In December 2016, weeks after the one-on-one meeting with Putin described in Volume 1, Section 4B1B Supra, Pyotr Oven attended what he described as a separate all-hands oligarch meeting between Putin and Russia's most prominent businessmen. As in Oven's one-on-one meeting, a main topic of discussion at the oligarch meeting in December 2016 was the prospect of forthcoming U.S. economic sanctions. After the December 2016 all-hands meeting, Oven tried to establish a connection to the Trump team. Oven instructed Richard Burt to make contact with the incoming Trump administration. Burt was on the board of directors for Letter One, L1, another company headed by Oven, and had done work for Alpha Bank. Burt had previously served as U.S. Ambassador to Germany and Assistant Secretary of State for European and Canadian Affairs, and one of his primary roles with Alpha Bank and L1 was to facilitate introductions to business contacts in the United States and other Western countries. While at an L1 board meeting held in Luxembourg in late December 2016, Oven pulled Burt aside and told him that he had spoken to someone high in the Russian government who expressed interest in establishing a communications channel between the Kremlin and the Trump transition team. Oven asked for Burt's help in contacting members of the transition team. Although Burt had been responsible for helping Oven build connections in the past, Burt viewed Oven's request as unusual and outside the normal realm of his dealings with Oven. Burt, who is a member of the board of CNI, discussed at Volume 1, Section 4A4 Supra, decided to approach CNI President Dmitry Simes for help facilitating Oven's request, recalling that Simes had some relationship with Kushner. At the time, Simes was lobbying the Trump transition team on Burt's behalf to appoint Burt U.S. Ambassador to Russia. Burt contacted Simes by telephone and asked if he could arrange a meeting with Kushner to discuss setting up a high-level communications channel between Putin and the incoming administration. Simes told the office that he declined and stated to Burt that setting up such a channel was not a good idea in light of the media attention surrounding Russian influence in the U.S. presidential election. According to Symes, he understood that Burt was seeking a secret channel, and Symes did not want CNI to be seen as an intermediary between the Russian government and the incoming administration. Based on what Symes had read in the media, he stated that he already had concerns that Trump's business connections could be exploited by Russia, and Symes said that he did not want CNI to have any involvement or apparent involvement in facilitating any connection. In an email dated December 22, 2016, Burt recounted for Aubin his conversation with Symes. Quote, "Through a trusted third party, I have reached out to the very influential person I mentioned in Luxembourg concerning Project A. There is an interest and an understanding for the need to establish such a channel, but the individual emphasized that at this moment, with so much intense interest in the Congress and the media over the question of cyber hacking and who ordered what, Project A was too explosive to discuss. The individual agreed to discuss it again after the new year. I trust the individual's instincts on this. If this is unclear to you or you would like to discuss, don't hesitate to call." Unquote. According to Burt, the very influential person referenced in his email was Symes, and the reference to a trusted third party was a fabrication, as no such third party existed. Project A was a term that Burt created for Aubin's effort to help establish a communications channel between Russia and the Trump team, which he used in light of the sensitivities surrounding what Aubin was requesting, especially in light of the recent attention to Russia's influence in the U.S. presidential election. According to Burt, his report that there was interest in a communications channel reflected Symes' views, not necessarily those of the transition team. And in any event, Burt acknowledged that he added some hype to that sentence to make it sound like there was more interest from the transition team than may have actually existed. Aubin replied to Burt's email on the same day, saying, quote, "Thank you, all clear," unquote. According to Aubin, this statement indicated that he did not want the outreach to continue. Burt spoke to Aubin sometime thereafter about his attempt to make contact with the Trump team, explaining to Aubin that the current environment made it impossible. Redaction, grand jury. Burt did not recall discussing Aubin's request with Symes again, nor did he recall speaking to anyone else about the request. In the first quarter of 2017, Aubin met again with Putin and other Russian officials. At that meeting, Putin asked about Aubin's attempt to build relations with the Trump administration, and Aubin recounted his lack of success. Redaction, grand jury. Putin continued to inquire about Aubin's efforts to connect to the Trump administration in several subsequent quarterly meetings. Aubin also told Putin's chief of staff that he had been subpoenaed by the FBI. As part of that conversation, he reported that he had been asked by the FBI about whether he had worked to create a back channel between the Russian government and the Trump administration. According to Aubin, the official showed no emotion in response to this report and did not appear to care. 6. Carter Page contact with Deputy Prime Minister Arkady Dvorkovich. In December 2016, more than 2 months after he was removed from the Trump campaign, former campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page again visited Moscow in an attempt to pursue business opportunities. Redaction, grand jury. According to Konstantin Kalimnik, Paul Manafort's associate, Page also gave some individuals in Russia the impression that he had maintained his connections to President-elect Trump. In a December 8, 2016 email intended for Manafort, Kalimnik wrote, quote, "Carter Page is in Moscow today, sending messages he is authorized to talk to Russia on behalf of DT on a range of issues of mutual interest, including Ukraine," unquote. On December 9, 2016, Page went to dinner with NES employees Shlomo Weber and Andrei Krikovich. Weber had contacted Dvorkovich to let him know that Page was in town and to invite him to stop by the dinner if he wished to do so, and Dvorkovich came to the restaurant for a few minutes to meet with Page. Dvorkovich congratulated Page on Trump's election and expressed interest in starting a dialogue between the United States and Russia. Dvorkovich asked Page if he could facilitate connecting Dvorkovich with individuals involved in the transition to begin a discussion of future cooperation, redactions, grand jury. Dvorkovich separately discussed working together in the future by forming an academic partnership, redactions, grand jury. 7. Contacts with and through Michael T. Flynn. Incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn was the transition team's primary conduit for communications with the Russian ambassador and dealt with Russia on two sensitive matters during the transition period: a United Nations Security Council vote and the Russian government's reaction to the United States' imposition of sanctions for Russian interference in the 2016 election. Despite Kushner's conclusion that Kislyak did not wield influence inside the Russian government, the transition team turned to Flynn's relationship with Kislyak on both issues. As to the sanctions, Flynn spoke by phone to K.T. McFarland, his incoming deputy, to prepare for his call to Kislyak. McFarland was with the president-elect and other senior members of the transition team at Mar-a-Lago at the time. Although transition officials at Mar-a-Lago had some concern about possible Russian reactions to the sanctions, the investigation did not identify evidence that the president-elect asked Flynn to make any request to Kislyak. Flynn asked Kislyak not to escalate the situation in response to U.S. sanctions imposed on December 29, 2016, and Kislyak later reported to Flynn that Russia acceded to that request. A. United Nations vote on Israeli settlements. On December 21, 2016, Egypt submitted a resolution to the United Nations Security Council calling on Israel to cease settlement activities in Palestinian territory. The Security Council, which includes Russia, was scheduled to vote on the resolution the following day. There was speculation in the media that the Obama administration would not oppose the resolution. According to Flynn, the transition team regarded the vote as a significant issue and wanted to support Israel by opposing the resolution. On December 22, 2016, multiple members of the transition team, as well as President-elect Trump, communicated with foreign government officials to determine their views on the resolution and to rally support to delay the vote or defeat the resolution. Kushner led the effort for the transition team. Flynn was responsible for the Russian government. Minutes after an early morning phone call with Kushner on December 22, Flynn called Kislyak. According to Flynn, he informed Kislyak about the vote and the transition team's opposition to the resolution, and requested that Russia vote against or delay the resolution. Later that day, President-elect Trump spoke with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi about the vote. Ultimately, Egypt postponed the vote. On December 23, 2016, Malaysia, New England, Senegal, and Venezuela resubmitted the resolution. Throughout the day, members of the transition team continued to talk with foreign leaders about the resolution, with Flynn continuing to lead the outreach with the Russian government through Kislyak. When Flynn again spoke with Kislyak, Kislyak informed Flynn that if the resolution came to a vote, Russia would not vote against it. The resolution later passed 14-0, with the United States abstaining. B. U.S. sanctions against Russia. Flynn was also the transition team member who spoke with the Russian government when the Obama administration imposed sanctions and other measures against Russia in response to Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. On December 28, 2016, then-President Obama signed Executive Order 13757, which took effect at 12:01 a.m. the following day and imposed sanctions on 9 Russian individuals and entities. On December 29, 2016, the Obama administration also expelled 35 Russian government officials and closed 2 Russian government-owned compounds in the United States. During the rollout of the sanctions, President-elect Trump and multiple transition team senior officials, including McFarland, Steve Bannon, and Reince Priebus, were staying at the Mar-a-Lago Club in Palm Beach, Florida. Flynn was on vacation in the Dominican Republic, but was in daily contact with McFarland. The transition team and President-elect Trump were concerned that these sanctions would harm the United States' relationship with Russia. Although the details and timing of sanctions were unknown, on December 28, 2016, the media began reporting that retaliatory measures from the Obama administration against Russia were forthcoming. When asked about imposing sanctions on Russia for its alleged interference in the 2016 presidential election, President-elect Trump told the media, quote, "I think we ought to get on with our lives," unquote. Russia initiated the outreach to the transition team. On the evening of December 28, 2016, Kislyak texted Flynn, quote, "Can you kindly call me back at your convenience," end quote. Flynn did not respond to the text message that evening. Someone from the Russian embassy also called Flynn the next morning at 10:38 a.m., but they did not talk. The sanctions were announced publicly on December 29, 2016. At 1:53 p.m. that day, McFarland began exchanging emails with multiple transition team members and advisors about the impact the sanctions would have on the incoming administration. At 2:07 p.m., a transition team member texted Flynn a link to a New York Times article about the sanctions. At 2:29 p.m., McFarland called Flynn, but they did not talk. Shortly thereafter, McFarland and Bannon discussed the sanctions. According to McFarland, Bannon remarked that the sanctions would hurt their ability to have good relations with Russia, and that Russian escalation would make things more difficult. McFarland believed she told Bannon that Flynn was scheduled to talk to Kislyak later that night. McFarland also believed she may have discussed the sanctions with Priebus, and likewise told him that Flynn was scheduled to talk to Kislyak that night. At 3:14 p.m., Flynn texted a transition team member who was assisting McFarland, quote, "Time for a call," unquote. The transition team member responded that McFarland was on the phone with Tom Bossert, a transition team senior official, to which Flynn responded, quote, "Tit for tat with Russia not good. Russian ambo reaching out to me today," unquote. Flynn recalled that he chose not to communicate with Kislyak about the sanctions until he had heard from the team at Mar-a-Lago. He first spoke with Michael Ledeen, a transition team member who advised on foreign policy and national security matters, for 20 minutes. Flynn then spoke with McFarland for almost 20 minutes to discuss what, if anything, to communicate to Kislyak about the sanctions. On that call, McFarland and Flynn discussed the sanctions, including their potential impact on the incoming Trump administration's foreign policy goals. McFarland and Flynn also discussed that transition team members in Mar-a-Lago did not want Russia to escalate the situation. They both understood that Flynn would relay a message to Kislyak in hopes of making sure the situation would not get out of hand. Immediately after speaking with McFarland, Flynn called and spoke with Kislyak. Flynn discussed multiple topics with Kislyak, including the sanctions, scheduling a video teleconference between President-elect Trump and Putin, an upcoming terrorism conference, and Russia's views about the Middle East. With respect to the sanctions, Flynn requested that Russia not escalate the situation, not get into a tit for tat, and only respond to the sanctions in a reciprocal manner. Multiple transition team members were aware that Flynn was speaking with Kislyak that day. In addition to her conversations with Bannon and Reince Priebus, at 4:43 p.m., McFarland sent an email to transition team members about the sanctions, informing the group that, quote, "Jen Flynn is talking to Russian ambassador this evening," unquote. Less than an hour later, McFarland briefed President-elect Trump. Bannon, Priebus, Sean Spicer, and other transition team members were present. During the briefing, President-elect Trump asked McFarland if the Russians did it, meaning the intrusions intended to influence the presidential election. McFarland said yes, and President-elect Trump expressed doubt that it was the Russians. McFarland also discussed potential Russian responses to the sanctions and said Russia's response would be an indicator of what the Russians wanted going forward. President-elect Trump opined that the sanctions provided him with leverage to use with the Russians. McFarland recalled that at the end of the meeting, someone may have mentioned to President-elect Trump that Flynn was speaking to the Russian ambassador that evening. After the briefing, Flynn and McFarland spoke over the phone. Flynn reported on the substance of his call with Kislyak, including their discussion of the sanctions. According to McFarland, Flynn mentioned that the Russian response to the sanctions was not going to be escalatory because they wanted a good relationship with the incoming administration. McFarland also gave Flynn a summary of her recent briefing with President-elect Trump. The next day, December 30, 2016, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov remarked that Russia would respond in kind to the sanctions. Putin superseded that comment 2 hours later, releasing a statement that Russia would not take retaliatory measures in response to the sanctions at that time. Hours later, President-elect Trump tweeted, quote, "Great move on delay by V. Putin," end quote. Shortly thereafter, Flynn sent a text message to McFarland summarizing his call with Kislyak from the day before, which she emailed to Kushner, Bannon, Priebus, and other transition team members. The text did not include sanctions as one of the topics discussed with Kislyak. Flynn told the office that he did not document his discussion of sanctions because it could be perceived as getting in the way of the Obama administration's foreign policy. On December 31, 2016, Kislyak called Flynn and told him the request had been received at the highest levels and that Russia had chosen not to retaliate to the sanctions in response to the request. 2 hours later, Flynn spoke with McFarland and relayed his conversation with Kislyak. According to McFarland, Flynn remarked that the Russians wanted a better relationship and that the relationship was back on track. Flynn also told McFarland that he believed his phone call had made a difference. McFarland recalled congratulating Flynn in response. Flynn spoke with other transition team members that day, but does not recall whether they discussed the sanctions. Flynn recalled discussing the sanctions with Bannon the next day, and that Bannon appeared to know about Flynn's conversation with Kislyak. Bannon, for his part, recalled meeting with Flynn that day, but said that he did not remember discussing sanctions with him. Additional information about Flynn's sanctions-related discussions with Kislyak and the handling of those discussions by the transition team and the Trump administration is provided in Volume 2 of this report. In sum, the investigation established multiple links between Trump campaign officials and individuals tied to the Russian government. Those links included Russian offers of assistance to the campaign. In some instances, the campaign was receptive to the offer, while in other instances, the campaign officials shied away. Ultimately, the investigation did not establish that the campaign coordinated or conspired with the Russian government in its election interference activities. End of Section 9. Recording by Amy Conger, San Francisco, California.
Oh, yeah, deny. But it's weird because they kept mentioning the island. They said it was Siklos, or something like that. Yeah, it's always deny. But I mean, it was funny that they keep bringing up an island and yet it's over in the Mediterranean, which made no sense. Because if you're going to Russia, why would you go to the Mediterranean island? I think there's another truth to that they're not telling us. Well, of course, sure, and Bannon. Bannon was in on it too. Because the first time I heard it mentioned was Bannon went to meet somebody on the island from Russia, but not meet them from Russia. Because it's kind of funny, all the records went to a certain date in their phones that they stopped, which means they deleted them. And the way to delete text messages out of your phone is you can't just, Bannon was on the boat, you can't just delete them and they're gone. They're not. The law enforcement can pull them back up. You have to factory reset your phone and it deletes everything. Then you put back on what you want. So that's how they got rid of the messages. And I mean, there should be other ways to pull up these messages. I know there is, because I remember they've used them in court, but I don't remember if they got them from the company or what. But yeah, they're using multiple apps that use encryption and also delete. They delete it all the time. FBI? You think they really can discover anything right now? I mean, unless it's on his left at a distance, I think he'll miss it. Just saying. But yeah, there's too much missing, in my opinion. Welcome up, Kajed. Did you mean to ask that?
Oh, yes, yes. So, again, this all points to where they could have had the FBI investigate them from the very beginning, knowing damn well that they are a bunch of crooks altogether. But they have money, so they can also pay off all these entities as well.
Yeah. But the problem is I don't trust the FBI because there's too much backroom dealings and such, for one.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I've seen is the people that are being mentioned here. You know where else a lot of them are mentioned?
Mm-hmm.
But there's no tie between the two. But I've always said there's a lot more of the e-files than they're saying, and there's a lot more of this than they're saying. And that's the reason that I don't think they want to release the information from the e-files, especially, because if they release that, it's going to blow the can on all this propaganda and all this stuff they've been doing throughout the years and get them in deep water and probably behind bars, which they should be.
So that's what I'm wondering, they spent a shorter amount of time. FBI spent a shorter amount of time, and they still nailed the mob.
The mob.
So that's where I'm like,
yeah, go ahead.
Don't tell me that they're not slipping up.
Well, I will say the mob was a little different because it was all in the United States that they got them for.
Was it all in the United States?
You didn't listen to the last part where I said what they got them for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this that they're dealing with Russia, they can't get the information from Russia because Russia's not going to provide anything that they're talking about.
Of course not.
Classified. And then these hints that, he didn't know that he was a agent of Russian bullshit. You know, everybody in the embassy is a Russian agent.
Hello, Ellie.
Hello, but don't forget what happened back in the 50s
Mm-hmm.
when it came to the Russia and the CIA.
Yep.
Which one are you talking about when they came over and started removing people?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't put it past,
So
I wouldn't put it past happening again because something's about to blow, and who knows what's going to cause, what's going to be the fallout.
I wouldn't doubt there's Russian FBI agents, I believe, and CIA agents at this point because of um Trump, I believe. Um I wouldn't doubt once he gets out of office and we get, let's say, a Democrat in there, there's going to be a new FBI and there's going to be a clean sweep and there's going to be allegations of police. There's going to be allegations of people. It's going to be just like 1950s all over again.
But
If
didn't we
you
have?
see what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I know where you're going, but I'm thinking back. Oh, fixing rain. Uh, Back in the 50s, yeah, they had a lot of that. But my issue was, didn't during Obama's term they kind of quietly were removing FBI agents, if I remember right?
Some,
Yeah.
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 Uh,
Um
that being said, I mean, I've always suspected there's, well, Russia, German, Middle East, all I country, Israel. There's all those spies are in our freaking three-letter agencies, in every one of them.
yeah, there is. And then also I'm trying to think, there's a actress. She laughs about it because her father was accused of being a spy.
Wasn't
Oh,
it Angelina Jolie at one point too?
No, it wasn't her, but she's very proud of it. It was a I forgot. It's actually a well-known actress, and it's not the generation of Angelina Jolie. It's an older generation. Um, Angelina Jolie is too young for it. It's more of in between Angelina Jolie and my father's generation. Um, that generation of actress that I'm thinking of, but she has the news article where they're accusing her father being a Russian spy. But they were attacking everybody of being a Russian spy. Everybody.
yeah, JFK's days. Even you could even see it in
Yeah.
the Warren Report.
Hmm.
Anna Chapman, formerly known as Anna Kushchenko.
I Kushner is definitely, I would say, definitely Kushner.
Kushner's in it. Bannon's in it. Kushner's more into it. Bannon's on the outside. Kushner's is the one that's doing the deals between Middle East and Russia.
Yeah, definitely.
In all the various countries that are in the Middle East.
Hmm.
And he's open about it. He's totally open about it.
That's why I am pissed about the Congress, because this case, you can see the connections are there. They just were not made, and I don't think it was on purpose.
Now that his father-in-law is president, he is 100% open about it, of who his business contacts are and his business partners are, like the Saudi.
Right.
Well, he was even the first term too.
Not as much.
He was deeply
Not
involved.
not as much as now, though. It's actually even more open now.
Because, see, the first time all we remember he was Middle East. He's Middle East, Middle East. Now he's Middle East and Russia. And even in the Mueller report, we didn't know it at the time because it wasn't released that he was involved in Russia. We just didn't know it. Or, yeah, the Mueller report.
I mean, he was there. Even before that, he was there.
But I'm trying to figure out, because what it sounds like, all these people were talking to meet, try to meet and all that from Russia in this group, seems like peons. You know those peons that are trying to get up ahead by meeting people and bringing that information back? That's who these people seem like when the ones that are getting turned down and all that.
They're puppets.
Yeah. And I think the island is not the island in the Middle East or Mediterranean. I think they're talking about closer to here. And it's just weird, the stuff that I know there's probably not a pattern at all, really. Well, not an obvious pattern, but I'm seeing patterns. Oh, wow, sorry about the echo. The patterns where they're talking about meeting on the island and it's Bannon, and you get the reports that Bannon's on Epstein Island, and I don't think Kushner was on Epstein.
No.
No, okay. But I mean, even Bannon, and we know there's counteragents in Russia that had ties to Epstein. We know there's iCountry people that had tie to Epstein, if not even BB is tied directly to him. And that's what I'm seeing here is they're holding back on the e-files because if they see where all the money came from, it may not have all been trafficking. You know what I mean?
It's still a cover-up.
Oh, it's cover-up.
And right now, Mar-a-Lago is the biggest.
Yeah, I'm not arguing. It's definitely cover-up. But what I'm thinking is the tie between the Russia, Epstein, iCountry, Middle East, and I think a little bit of China, but I don't think China's a lot into that realm. But all those ties and all these dealings that he's been doing throughout time, the Russian interference on the election was just the tip of the berg that they didn't go any deeper. There's so much more to the story that they could have covered, that they should have covered. And who knows what's in the other two volumes. I don't remember going outside of the election, though, when I read through it the first time.
I think they're waiting too long to pinch him, and they just can't necessarily pin him down to pinch him enough.
Well, my issue is the law Secret Service. Their first primary job, yes, is to protect the president, protect the vice president. But if they're safe, their job is to do law enforcement. And part of law enforcement would be to point out the fact that there's classified materials in Mar-a-Lago after he was president. And that's the other issue I have. How did he keep those documents and the law enforcement that was there on scene not say a damn word about it? It took the National Archives to say, hey, where's these files? Bring them to us.
He was hiding them in the guest bedroom or guest bathroom.
The $1 million toilet. But even that, you think about it, he was trying to remove them and put them in another office so that they could say they're not there. Secret Service had to be there for those discussions. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that's why
I have to put my phone in the freezer, guys. My phone's overheating.
Oh, you serious? Wow.
Yeah, I was playing a game at the same time as listening to you
Oh,
guys. You.
don't. I've run across that one myself. Yeah, it's gonna overheat badly.
Love you guys. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
But yeah, there's so much stuff that it's intertwined that they've been covering up, and the problem is they've been covering it up so long that it's gonna destroy a lot of the government.
I
It,
mean, I say let it happen. Let the crumbs fall. But
burn it
we need to
down.
start somewhere now.
Yeah. See,
I mean, don't sit on your fucking hands. Let's do something now about it.
and that's where I think people have got to realize that we need to get rid of the incumbents in the Congress,
Mm-hmm.
because as long as the incumbents are in Congress, they're going to keep the stuff covered up.
All right.
And I don't care what party they're on, they're going to keep this covered up because they're getting kickbacks, they're getting money off of it. So if it comes out to light, they're all going to go down, or a lot of them. Not all of them. Not all. A lot of them.
I mean, hit a reset button on them all.
Yeah. And truthfully, I believe that the APAC is not only Israel. I think it's a way that they smuggle money in via that. Well, now they got crypto as the freaking president, so.
But look who it benefits. It doesn't benefit the American people.
No.
None of it has benefited the American people.
No.
But their expectations are super high for themselves.
Just a second, I got in my ears the freaking puzzle music.
Okay.
Okay, done with that.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, there's so much that's been covered up all a long time, and I believe that the Taco has been all entwined in this well before he's president.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've been
Oh, yeah.
they have been grooming him for the presidency since he was freaking 30s, since he was started with Ivanka or Ivana.
Yeah.
Why do I
80s.
want to keep calling her Ivanka?
Whatever.
But yeah, I mean, there's even, I remember the Mueller report, but I haven't seen it yet. It may be later on, where they actually say that the agent contacted him in the 80s, and they arranged for him to meet Ivana in Russia, and Putin was part of that deal. That was when Putin was part of the KGB. Because he was
what?
that.
I don't even remember where they got Putin from.
Putin's KGB.
And I don't remember when he came up.
He was KGB. He started coming up into their politics right after the KGB fell. Right after the wall fell. Let me check.
So, what was that, 88, 87?
Mm-hmm. Vladimir Putin began his political career in 1991 in St. Petersburg after resigning from the KGB, which is right after the wall fell. Mm-hmm. Later moving to Moscow in 1996 to join President Yeltsin.
When he was still alive.
Rose to the FSB, which was the new KGB, in 1998. Became prime minister in August of 99, and then started acting president in December of 99 and continued from there.
Okay, so he's been for a while. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big thing I noticed is he started right after the big push of the fall of the wall and KGB falling.
Yeah. So he was another groomed one.
I don't think Putin was groomed. I think Putin was the one grooming. Putin has better ties than anybody realizes.
Probably so. I'm still gonna call it groomed.
Einstein says not him. What, buddy?
Because KGB.
Oh yeah, he was KGB agent. He's head of FSB. It's
And remember, they're all just fucking puppets. So there's somebody else who is behind them, who is throwing them all to the front, in the forefront.
who's the puppet master? The billionaires,
Mm-hmm.
the trillionaires. Actually, is what
Because
they
they're
really
giving
are.
them money to say, hey, hush on this. Sure, no problem. Okay, cool. Chain reaction of hush.
Well, I think it's gone from the hush or from the e-file propaganda. They were using that to blackmail people. What's so serious?
But why can't we get them out?
Are you talking about get the people in Congress out, or just get
No, just every CEO just
the
even cap
propaganda?
them.
It's the
It's
propaganda.
it's so much though.
I mean, this propaganda has got people believing that if they go with the GOP, they're going to get what they want when we know the GOP is tearing everything down. What do you need, buddy? Let me go give him something real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay, and this also goes back to Trump and his media company and what it's all producing out now. Oh, never mind.
That was his. I was. Oh yeah, I am unmuting.
I forgot what I said.
No, I mean he was getting a little irate, and you want to know what he did? He got me to go all the way in there. I went in
Yeah.
his cage and looked at me like, okay. I'm like, did you want something?
Nice.
But yeah, you were talking about Putin and the regime there and KGB.
They're all grown. And then, what was it? Too bad we cannot get rid of all the CEOs. And push restart on them as well.
Yeah, it would be nice.
But they're all gonna be dying here soon.
Well, what the hell was that? Me?
I don't know.
It stopped as soon as I muted. You notice that?
Terry Cook, come back! It fell.
Oh, feedback because the other mic turned on.
No, I'm alright.
The real thing is weird. This whole thing is weird, and it's been going generations because we all know that Epstein was not the beginning of that trafficking ring.
No.
I mean, it started way before him.
I still think that it also points to, the Madam of Washington from that era as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got Madam of Washington, Epstein, and you got.
And remember the Playboy dealings as well, because Hugh Hefner had his little hideouts and hideaways that they would also go and, frequent.
Hoover, that's the one I'm thinking of.
From Hoover years?
Yeah, I'm thinking back in Hoover's day was an issue. It was a lot of what's going on.
It's all intertwined. It's mind-boggling for it all. Oh, stupid question. For sidetracked. You know that video I had sent you from YouTube? Have you seen that one before?
Okay, I'm trying to remember what it was about.
About the schmutzies.
No, I have not. Hold on, let me see if switching the mic off us. Okay, cut this mic off. Hopefully that kills the echo.
Hello?
And we'll go from there.
Hello?
You're hearing me fine now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Remember last night we tried this and what happened? We lost everything.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, because Hoover, I don't know if you know it, Hoover saved documents. Hoover saved things that he could use in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And those documents are somewhere that have not turned up yet. And it's either a relative of his or those went into the Epstein Island stuff. Because everything seems to be, maybe I'm making too much out of that one thing. Because there seems to be so much around Epstein in the world that should be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I say they need to stop pussyfooting around and burn it all down. We got to clean out the dead wood. We got to clean out the secrets and move on.
I don't think it's gonna happen. Or, I mean, maybe, just maybe for Gen Alphas, maybe their generation will have this clean sweep of everybody.
Now it's your turn with the smoke.
Yeah. Oh no, she's hungry again. This will be her third or fourth feeding today.
But actually, they have. I just found it today. Unredacted a lot of the stuff in this file.
I mean, duh.
It has names.
Mm-hmm.
But I think of a lot of what's happening is the people that are resigning. They're not resigning because of Trump. They're resigning because something came to light, and they don't want it to get out. Because think about it. How hot was Marjorie Taylor Greene to get the information about the e-files out in the open and get these survivors participating in court? Remember how much she pushed that, and all of a sudden, boom, she resigned and got done. And she says it was because she found out T was in it, and it wasn't just Clinton. And I'm sorry, but if she believed that he was not in there, she was a fool.
Who are we talking about? MTG?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to clarify on that one.
Well, she's the one that comes to mind all the time. The others are resigned are not. I haven't seen them in the limelight around that part, but I think they're all resigning because something is fixing to give, and they don't want to be there when it does because they may go down with the ship.
Well, Graham's gonna go down with the ship either way.
Yeah.
He's at the helm.
Yeah, he's back and forth. He's like, oh, I don't like him. Yes, I like him, but Graham and the Weasel over in the house.
Which weasel? There's so many.
The Weasel that don't want to work. No, that doesn't limit it down either, does it? The one's supposed to be in charge. Let's put it that way. This other thing that nobody's keying on. We do realize that a lot of what he's doing is, how he's supposed to contact and tell Congress what he's doing. You know how he's doing that, right? He's telling Johnson's Congress. He told Congress he fulfilled his duties. And in reality, I think that's the other reason that Jim Jordan and all of them are kind of keeping the e-files kind of hush, trying to keep hush hush, is because they realize if that comes out, that takes down them and Taco, and they no longer have control. They're trying to keep control as long as possible. And why they pushed so hard to get the map redistricts. And we've got to do it as a nation, step up and go, no, and turn out the vote. But they're already starting the vote raise. Oh, come in, Lisa. See, I heard something. I think I heard that. the other day I heard that 10 states voted back in or voted in Republicans, and it's one of the hard states we kind of worry about. Not Louisiana, though.
Milk is almost done with feeding time.
Mm,
Otherwise, all you're gonna hear is clank, 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 and
yeah. Yes, yeah, that's what I thought. There hadn't been any official elections to vote somebody into a seat in local or state or federal yet, right? So what they're doing is they're using the garbage of the this candidate is not a MAGA and he got voted in, so the GOP is winning. That's what I'm seeing right now. Is I'm seeing they're giving a false narrative with only partial data, which they always do. Oh, it's just the mountain. Okay. Welcome in, Pete. The Epstein tries to countries. He ties to United States, Israel, United Kingdom, France, Saudi Arabia and UAE, Russia and Ukraine, Cayman Islands, Norway, Ivory Coast and Mongolia, other countries of evidence, Australia, Jordan, Morocco, Bernie, Canada, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland.